The elevator doors parted on the 32nd floor of Meridian Tower with a soft, expensive hiss. Ethan Calloway stepped out first, making sure his shoulder blocked the gap long enough for Lily to slip through behind him. She was 7 years old, wore her auburn hair in 2 lopsided pigtails because he still hadn't mastered that particular skill, and was carrying a laminated library card against her chest, the way some children carry stuffed animals like it was the most important object in any room she entered. "How many floors is 32? She whispered. "A lot," he said. "More than our apartment building?" "About 4 times more." She tilted her head back, studying the ceiling as if trying to calculate the math. The lobby stretched ahead of them, pale limestone floors, a reception desk wrapped in brushed steel, a wall of glass that looked out over a gray November sky. The whole floor smelled of fresh coffee and controlled ambition. Ethan adjusted the folder under his arm. He had assembled it the night before, working at the kitchen table after Lily went to bed, in the specific quality of quiet that a small apartment produces when a child is sleeping, not silence exactly, but something domestically contained, safe at its edges. He had printed his resume twice, and discarded the first version, because the margins looked asymmetrical under the harsh overhead light. Then he had sat back and looked at what he had made, and tried to see it the way a stranger would see it. The folder contained his resume, 2 letters of recommendation, and a brief portfolio of maintenance and facilities management work going back 11 years. It was not a glamorous portfolio. It did not have the kind of trajectory that made human resources managers sit up straighter. What it had was a record of every problem he had ever been handed, followed by a record of how he had solved it systematically, completely, without drama. The gap was visible. 14 months of contract work, each engagement lasting 3 to 6 months. None of them at the level his earlier career suggested he should be operating at. He had thought about how to address this in a cover letter, and had decided, in the end, to say it plainly. He had left a demanding shift work role to provide stability for his daughter, following the death of his wife, and he had spent the intervening period working at whatever level was available to him, while looking for a position that matched his actual capabilities. This was the truth. He was not ashamed of it. He was, however, aware that it required the reader to extend a particular kind of generosity that not every reader would extend. He approached the reception desk. The young man behind it glanced at the 2 of them, the man in the pressed but clearly off-the-rack dress shirt, the child with the library card, and his expression managed to be professionally neutral in a way that communicated a great deal. "Ethan Calloway. I have a 9 o'clock interview for the head of building, safety, and compliance." The receptionist typed without looking at him. "Miss Hartwell will be with you shortly. Please take a seat in the waiting area." He paused, then added, "There is a children's play area on this floor, 2nd corridor on your left. It's a shared employee amenity. But we sometimes accommodate children of candidates while interviews are in progress." Lily tugged Ethan's sleeve. "Can I?" "Stay inside the room," he said. And the way he said it wasn't anxious, it was calm, specific. A man who gave instructions he expected to be followed. "Don't go anywhere else in the building. If anything feels wrong, you come find me immediately." What would feel wrong? He thought about that for a moment. The honest answer was a smell, or a sound, or the kind of pressure, change in the air, that announces itself before your brain has put language to it. But those were the answers of a professional, and what she needed was the answer of a father. "You'll know," he said. She seemed satisfied with this answer and went, still holding her library card. Ethan waited 22 minutes past his scheduled appointment time. He noted this without judgment. Companies often tested candidates through the waiting, and he had learned long ago that the quality of a person's patience was a better signal of their character than anything they said in an interview. The waiting area had 2 other people in it. One was a younger man in an expensive suit, who kept checking his phone and visibly recalibrating his posture every few minutes, adjusting the fall of his jacket, crossing and uncrossing his legs, running a calculation Ethan recognized as the assessment of whether the wait itself was a sign that his application was not going well. The other was a woman in her late 40s, reading an actual printed magazine with the focused attention of someone who genuinely enjoyed reading printed magazines, impervious to the room around her. Ethan thought about both of them briefly, and then looked out the window at the city. He had lived in this city for 9 years. He knew its bones, the old warehouse district that had been converted to lofts, the chemical plant on the eastern edge, whose evacuation procedures he had personally redesigned during his 3rd year with the county fire department, the glass bridge downtown that had a structural flex variance that most engineers didn't account for, but that he had cataloged during a late-night walk with Lily 2 years ago when she was 5, and still small enough to sit on his shoulders. She had held his head like a steering wheel, pointing where she wanted to go, and he had walked wherever she aimed, and spent the whole time looking at the joints between materials and the behavior of stressed concrete at low temperatures. He had left the fire department 14 months ago. The decision had not been complicated, exactly, but it had taken a long time to arrive at. After Sarah died, the calculus changed. He could still remember, precisely, the moment the change registered, not at the funeral, not in the weeks after, but on a Tuesday morning 11 months later when he had come home at 7 a.m. from a 24-hour shift, and Lily had been sitting at the kitchen table in her school uniform. And she had looked at him with an expression that was not unhappy, but was thoroughly unsurprised by his absence. She had adjusted. She had built a life that did not expect him to be there for its ordinary moments. She was 6 years old, and she had already learned to grieve for a living parent, the way she was still learning to grieve for a dead one. He had sat down across from her and said nothing for a long time. Then he had handed in his notice. He had tried to make it work for a year and a half before that. He had failed, so he had made a different choice, the harder choice disguised as the smaller one, and had spent the last year working a series of contract facilities jobs, while looking for something permanent that paid enough, something that used what he actually knew, something that would let him be home when Lily ate dinner, and asleep when she slept, and present in the ordinary hours that turned out, when you added them up, to constitute a childhood. A door opened. A woman in a charcoal blazer stood in the doorframe and said his name in a tone that was not unkind. Exactly, but had the brisk quality of a person who had already made decisions and was simply completing the procedural steps. Her name was Victoria Hartwell, and she was the chief executive officer of Meridian Group, not, as Ethan had expected from the job listing, a department head conducting a search. He registered this shift quietly and recalibrated. She was 36, he estimated. Sharp-boned face, dark hair pulled back with the kind of severe precision that announced it was not a style choice but an efficiency choice. She had the bearing of someone who had worked twice as hard as everyone around her for a decade, and was permanently alert to the possibility that someone might forget this. There was nothing soft about the way she occupied a room. She filled it with intention, every movement purposeful, every pause deliberate. It was a performance of control so sustained and complete that it had, he suspected, long since stopped being a performance, and simply become how she existed. The office she led him into was large and organized to a degree that went past professional into something closer to a psychological statement. Every object on her desk occupied its position deliberately. The books on the shelves behind her were arranged not by height or color but by subject, and the subjects formed a coherent intellectual biography. Structural engineering codes, corporate governance texts, crisis management literature, 2 thicker volumes on organizational psychology. There were no personal photographs. The single piece of art on the wall was an architectural, rendering the Meridian Tower complex itself. Viewed from the northeast at dawn, everything clean lines and glass catching light. She sat. He sat. She opened his folder without looking at him, and read for approximately 45 seconds in the manner of someone who had already read it before, and was confirming their memory was accurate. "Your degree is in structural engineering," she said. "That's right. You didn't complete your master's." "No. I left the program to join the fire department." She turned a page. "You were a firefighter. And then, it says here, a fire investigator. Structural fire investigator. I assessed post-incident building integrity and identified failure points specifically, how the fire traveled through a structure, which materials failed, and in what sequence, what the building's design contributed to or mitigated the spread. Then I moved into fire safety engineering consultation. which meant working with architects and developers on new construction to identify